So welcome to our video today. We spoke with Sarah Brightwell from Citizens Advice Southampton. She's given us lots of really helpful information, and hopefully she's kind of opened that door that you can reach out and get some help for yourself if you're struggling on your own and you find the information really hard to take in via reading it. Then actually Citizens Advice place really well for you to be able to pick up the phone and speak to somebody. And also she says they can call you back, so don't let that be an obstacle. Try and take that first step and reach out and get some support from them, and they can help with debt and finances, is what we're talking about today, but they offer a very wide umbrella of support. So if they don't know or don't have the information that you might need, or they think there's a more specialist service that can support you, then they'll help you be put in touch with them as well. So thank you for watching. Okay, so welcome, Sarah. Could you maybe tell us a little bit about Citizens Advice and Southampton and what it offers and how it kind of supports debt and finances?
Morning, Claire. Thanks for welcoming me onto the video today. Citizens Advice Southampton is part of the wider Citizens Advice network. We're a completely free, impartial and confidential service that's really here for absolutely everybody. So regardless of background, age, race, anything else, we will be here for you. We offer tailored advice on a really wide range of topics. So we cover benefits, we cover debt, housing, employment, immigration, lots and lots of other subjects as well. And we have services like we can help people to claim universal credit if they've recently been made redundant. We can look at what benefits people might be able to get. Some offices, we have the European Union settlement scheme, so we can help people apply for settled status, which can help them improve their financial situation, and lots of specialist projects in the various local areas as well. In terms of money advice, in Southampton we have a specialist money advice project. We have several qualified money advisors who can support with debt advice, and that could be anything from just some initial information and some help, maybe some template letters, right through to specialist casework. And I know a lot of our clients who have mental health issues often really appreciate having that extra support, so we really kind of can take on the case, negotiate with creditors, look at repayment plans, look at all the various options that people have so that they can resolve their situation. When someone comes into us, the first step is always that we ask lots of questions. So whether that's on the phone, whether someone's contacted by email, and when face-to-face services are open, obviously not at the moment, we do have to do a really thorough exploration. So there might be quite a lot of questions when someone first speaks to us, but that's so that we can make sure we've covered everything and we know that we're giving the best advice for that particular person. With money advice, the kinds of things we can do, we can help draw up a budget so people know what they've got coming in and going out. We can provide template letters to maybe send to creditors, ask for more support from creditors. We can advise creditors where a client is vulnerable. Again, if someone has mental health problems or physical health problems, there are extra steps the creditors should take. And we can advise on options and next steps, which could be anything from an affordable repayment plan to maybe looking at insolvency options, which is the right thing for some people. And we can help with things like court forms as well, or identifying where there might actually be a legal challenge to a debt.
That sounds like a very tailored service and very individual for people.
It's very important, and it's actually a requirement. We're authorised by the Financial Conduct Authority to offer debt advice, and it's actually a legal requirement that the advice that we give has to be tailored to that person. We can't just, some people, they just need a bit of information, they'll go away and progress themselves, but we have to make sure that what we've suggested is always appropriate to that individual situation, and everyone's different, so we really spend the time to get to know the client, get to know their situation, so that we can support them to work out what's going to be the best way forward for them.
And I imagine the virus has changed in terms of how you tend to have contact with clients. So you said before people could go in and have face-to-face meetings.
Yeah, that unfortunately the face-to-face has been suspended at the moment because of coronavirus. Our debt caseworkers are delivering advice over the phone and by email. We now have contact forms over on our website, which is a new service as well. And we are currently in negotiation with the council about reopening just very limited face-to-face advice, but we're very conscious that some people really don't cope with the phone. And it's important that where people really do need to come in and see someone, that we can arrange that in a way that's safe for them and safe for the advisor, but they can still get the support that they need. So that service will be coming soon, but it's only for those people who really, really need it.
Yeah, because I think for some people using a phone or using technology is kind of adds to the stress of whatever problem they have going on at that time.
Absolutely, and that's something we're very conscious of. Again, particularly with clients with mental health difficulties or with learning difficulties, this kind of thing, they can't always use the phone. Or another thing we're finding is that people can't always afford to top up their phone. Obviously, we will always call people back if that's what they need, but it can make things much more difficult if you're needing to make phone calls and actually you haven't got the cash for the top up and you need the advice to get the top up, and it becomes a bit of a vicious circle. So we're doing everything we can to work around that.
Well, yeah, thanks for the overview. What is it that's kind of made you interested in working for Citizens Advice?
I've been working in advice, information and guidance services since 2006. Initially that was actually in a mental health service. I was visiting people in their homes and doing quite long-term casework with them. I moved to Citizens Advice in 2015, actually in a different office, and I was absolutely blown away by the support they offer. I mean, people come into us and they can ask us almost anything and we will do our best to help them. Sometimes we can't, sometimes we get some quite odd questions, as you can imagine, but that means that it's different every day, which I love. And I'm really, really passionate about helping people, have been for a long time, and I think Citizens Advice just does a fantastic job. The other thing we do a lot of, which people often aren't so aware of, is we do a lot of research and campaigns work on both local and national issues. So where we see so many people, we get an awful lot of information about what problems the people are having. Obviously, we use that anonymously, but we can look at, I don't know, it could be anything from there's a problem with one particular local bailiff or their collection practices, through to there's been some big campaigns recently on changing the way that energy companies charge for fuel on prepayment meters and changing the eviction processes for landlords. And we can use all our data to try and prevent problems for people in the future, as well as sorting things out there and then when people come into us. So it's just a fantastic organisation, and of course it's all supported by hundreds and hundreds of volunteers. I think across the country we have about 22,500 volunteers. Wow. Again, that's a lot of people who feel passionately enough to give us their time and expertise, which is amazing.
So how do you think Citizens Advice benefits your clients' kind of mental health? So we've obviously, we're talking about finances and people's money situations and debt, and there are obviously some very clear links there between someone's ability to have some positive feelings if they're very consumed by their finances. So how do you think their service actually helps people's mental health?
So I think obviously, when someone's got practical problems, they're often very, very stressed. Like you say, they can be consumed by thinking about that one thing, or maybe it's several things. And that's often, things can get very tangled. There's a knock-on effect. Maybe your benefits get messed up and they stop. And then suddenly you can't pay the rent and your landlord's being funny about it. And then you're worried about the bills, and mental health can drop quite quickly in those circumstances. And the worse the mental health gets, and having worked in mental health for a long time, I've seen this a lot myself as well, and experienced it to some extent myself. The worse you feel, the harder it is to deal with the problems, and then the worse the problems get, and the worse you feel, and it becomes a bit of a vicious circle. So I think for many people, they really struggle to kind of tackle those problems, and it can get to a point, and I think we've all done it, rather than opening the letter you need to deal with, you put it to one side, you shove it under the sofa, and just try and forget about it. But actually you kind of know in the background it's still there, it's not going to go away. So the things that our advisors can do, quite often the first thing I think is that when people come to us, we're often the first person that person has really spoken to about their problems. So they've been really pushing it to one side, try not to think about it, but people really do say it's a weight off their mind just to get it out and say, look, I've got this going on, I don't know what to do. And that is the hardest step, that is the single most difficult step, because there will always be a way forward. We might take a bit of time to work out what it is. It may not always be what people want, but there will always be steps that can be taken to make things better. Our advisors are trained to really look at the situation, work out what the urgent issues are, and sometimes that's not what people think they are. People come in with a red bill, but there's something else that's actually way more urgent that is maybe not at the forefront of their mind. We can explain information, so people are struggling to understand things, and we can make sure that it's clear and sort of put clear next steps in place so that they know, okay, I need to do this week, that next week, then I phone again, and then we can move forward. And sometimes when we've got capacity and when someone really can't take action themselves, which again is often the case, particularly in the early stages of advice with someone with more severe mental health issues, we can take some of that action on someone's behalf as well. So whether that's helping to apply for benefits or contacting creditors to get them to hold off, all that kind of thing. So I think my experience of working with clients, and I know a lot of our clients say this, is that coming in initially is terrifying, and quite often people will come in with a bunch of paperwork and they haven't wanted to think about it, and someone's given them a nudge, or they've gone, no, I just need to do this, and that's the really hard part. But after that first appointment, people tend to feel really relieved that they have taken some action. Firstly, they got it all off their chest, and secondly, that they know there is going to be a way forward. It might not be quick, but there will be something that can be done to help. So really, I think, the message to people is to don't put it off, but do take that first step. I know it's hard, but our advisors are aware of that as well. They're all trained to support people with mental health issues, as well as, be understanding, and they know how to kind of tailor advice to people in that specific situation as well. So if at all possible, don't put it off, because the sooner we can look at things, the sooner you'll feel better, and the sooner we can start to resolve the issues as well.
Yeah, and I think this idea of being able to actually share what's happening and it not being a secret or not being a hidden thing, because certainly if you're in the midst of it, in the middle of it, trying to make some sense of it is incredibly difficult. So actually having someone else that you can kind of either verbally or physically lay everything out with, to give a bit of clarity and a different perspective, must be incredibly helpful. So I definitely understand this idea of that first step. I see it in counselling, that the strength and courage it takes for people to reach out to start with and say, actually, I'm struggling a little bit here, and at what point it's crisis point. Unfortunately with counselling, quite often people get to crisis point, and obviously counsellors will always be there at that point, but there's no kind of point where someone should feel worried about reaching out. I imagine that you'll help people at whatever stage they're at and whatever.
Absolutely. And it's not that all of our clients have mental health problems either, but I think the other thing, particularly with debt, is that there's this kind of perception of shame sometimes. How did I get here? What have I done wrong? And all of the clients that I see, something's happened that's outside of their control, that has got them into that situation. And our advisors are completely non-judgmental. We don't look at what you've done, what you should have done instead. We look at where you are now and what you can do to make things better and what we can do to support you to make things better. So no matter what the situation is, there doesn't need to be any shame in coming to us, basically, because that's not what we're here for. We're not here to say, oh no, you're a terrible person, you shouldn't have done it like that. We're here to say, okay, that's really difficult for you. What can we do to move things forward? And really going into the detail of that and supporting with that.
So do you have any kind of recommendations that people could maybe start to use at home to support their own personal finances?
The best starting point is always to make a budget, and as debt advisors, this is something we would do as a starting point. There's some really good budgeting tools you can actually use online. So there's one on the Citizens Advice website, that's the national website. And it just helps you look at how much you've got coming in each month, and then thinking about what you've got going out. So the essential things like your rent, your council tax, gas and electricity, phone, and so on. And then it will work out for you what you've got left to spend on food, clothes, hobbies, all the other stuff. Particularly if you've just recently had a change in income due to furlough or moving on to benefits, redundancy, anything like that, it's really, really important to draw up a budget so that you can work out what you can afford. Again, like we were just saying, this is something that there should be a whole term of classes on this at school, quite honestly, because a lot of people just don't realise that it's important. But without that, how do you know what you can afford? And
absolutely,
that's where things tend to slip, is people thinking they've got more money than they have, or perhaps they forget that actually the expenditure on, I don't know, their kids going swimming twice a week adds up, and they've forgotten to include that anywhere, and actually it can be quite a big portion of the budget sometimes. So definitely creating a budget, working out what you've got left over each month and sticking to it so that you don't run into problems. And that's really a preventative measure, and it's something we will always do as part of money advice anyway. The other thing that's worth doing is looking at benefit entitlement. So quite often people don't realise they can get benefits, or they might have applied for one but missed another one they might be able to get. There's some really good benefits checkers online. We often use something called Turn to Us, and that's the benefits calculator, and that will tell you about things like universal credit, or whether you might get top-ups of council tax reduction, this kind of thing. And for people who are more unwell, you might want to consider whether you could get some disability related benefits as well. So that's things like personal independence payment, which can help with extra costs. Now that one particularly is not a quick process, but you shouldn't just assume you won't get it. It's worth having a proper look into it. And if you're not sure, that's one of the things Citizens Advice will help with, is to look at, what benefits can you get, how do you apply? We can support with the applications and so on if it's too much for you to do yourself.
I mean, that all sounds fantastic, to have these tools online to help support, and then a backstop of being able to actually go and get some help if So obviously, with the environment that's happening at the moment, there are people in very difficult employment situations. So do you support people kind of getting back into work, and what support is there available in terms of people who have found themselves unemployed and are wanting to start working again, or having to change jobs, change professions?
The kinds of things we can do, we can look at benefit entitlement to make sure people understand, if I take this job, how much would I earn, how much benefit would I get, what's my total income. We can help with budgeting and so on around that. We don't specifically do kind of support into employment, but we do have local organisations that do, and we can signpost to them as well. So that would be different to different areas in Hampshire, but our advisors would look to signpost or refer to these other organisations. The other thing which I think is important at the moment is that we do kind of employment advice in terms of if you're being made redundant or you've been dismissed, is that fair? Has it been gone through the right process? Is there any legal challenge? Have you got all the pay you're entitled to? All that side of stuff. We're seeing a lot of employment issues at the moment, and have been really since the start of the crisis. It's shot right up, and it's wobbled a bit, but we're still seeing a lot more than we usually would. So if you're at all unsure, and again, if you think, why was I selected for redundancy and not that person? Is that a reasonable process? If you've been dismissed, and particularly if you think it might have anything to do with a mental health problem or any other kind of illness or disability, it's always worth getting advice, because employment law is particularly complicated, and our advisors will be able to look at what's happened and see whether it was fair, whether you might have any kind of recourse to the employer, or as a last resort to the courts. And also things like sometimes unpaid holiday pay. So employers you might say, okay, I understand I've been made redundant, but I haven't taken any holiday for ages, and what am I entitled to? And the employer hasn't paid it, and we can help with all that kind of thing as well, just to really help maximise the amount of money that you've got right now.
Yeah, because again, it's one of those things at the moment, it's very difficult to think of all of those things. When, you know, when the overriding thing you might be thinking about is, I'm out of a job now, so it's hard to maybe think, what am I entitled to? Is this a legal process that's been... So yeah, I mean, again, I think that's something the advisors would always pick up. So a benefits claim, if someone's just lost their job, a benefits claim will always be the first thing, because we want to make sure people have got some income. But then our advisors would always ask questions around employment to try and get a sense of whether there is something going on. And actually, employment issues, if there is anything, a lot of employment issues is a 3-month time limit. So you actually need to act quite quickly if you're going to resolve anything. So I think that's probably really good for people to know in the current state.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I think where we're expecting more of these issues to arise, it's really important to remember, okay, your immediate concern is to make sure you've got money coming in, food on the table, roof over your head. But if there is any hint of a kind of discrimination or unfair dismissal or some redundancy process that wasn't right or anything like that, the time limits are quite short, and you need to ask advice sooner rather than later. And that is when you can read a certain amount of information online, but because it is quite a complex area of law, it is often worth speaking to an advisor, particularly if you're at all unsure.
That sounds a really good piece of advice, I think. So when we're looking at kind of mental health, I was wondering, what kind of things do you have in place that you support your own mental health, and how do you kind of keep yourself thinking?
It's quite an interesting one at the moment. I've had depression in the past, on and off, since I was a teenager, so I'm quite conscious of looking after myself. Pretty good at the moment, but has its moments, and particularly with various stresses recently. And initially I thought it was in the shielding group, and that freaked me out and didn't do so well for a few days, and then I decided it wasn't. So I'm lucky to have a supportive partner, and I think my single biggest thing for me is to try and say if I don't feel good, because I'm the sort of person who'll try and paste on a smile when what I feel like is curling up in a ball and crying. That happens at work as well. When I was in the office, obviously I'm not at the moment, and I try and have the conversation with my work when I first start in a new job to say, look, I do have these problems. I find it very hard to say, if you notice I don't look great, please ask me. Because if someone asks me, I'll say. If I'm feeling rough and nobody asks me, I'll try and carry on pretending nothing's happening, and that actually makes it 10 times worse. So for me, the single biggest thing is to say if I'm feeling rough. I really love being outdoors, so I go for quite a lot of walks. I've just started cycling again, often with my partner, and even just 15 minutes out in the sun or in the park can be really, really good for me. It doesn't have to be a big long walk or loads of exercise, burning the calories or anything like that. It's just get outside, get some fresh air, move for a bit. Particularly when I've had a super busy day at work, I have to go out, otherwise I go a bit stir crazy. I've got lots of hobbies, so I love painting. I'm enjoying doing the garden at the moment, but when I feel really low, it can be very hard to get going on those. And I kind of think I'll probably like the painting, but I can't do it. And I have to really push myself. But I find that if I do push myself, or my partner gives me a shove and says, just do the wretched painting, for goodness sake, I will always feel better for it. It's just that getting started. At one point, I actually had a little sign on the wall saying, just do it anyway. Even though, you know, I feel rubbish, I feel too tired, I feel miserable, I don't want to do it. Actually, if I do it, I will feel better for it. Being careful not to overwork, which, as you can imagine, recently has been a bit of a challenge, because particularly working from home, it's quite easy to still be here, do the kids' dinner, sit back down, 8:30, still working. Partner has to kick me off the computer, so I'm really trying to finish on time or claim the time back later if I don't. And the other thing I do, which is a little bit silly, but I rather like it, is I've got a big sticker chart on my wall. And anytime anything good happens, or I've been for a nice walk, or I play some games with my kids, or made a really good meal, I write it up in a coloured pen and put a sticker on. I'm a bit daft like that. I love stickers, but
I think that sounds lovely.
It's just really cheerful, and it's so easy to focus on the things that you haven't done, or the things that are a bit rubbish, and to have this nice bright colourful thing saying this happened, that was good, that was good, that was good. And when I'm low, I kind of set the bar a bit lower. So if I've cooked myself dinner, I'll give myself a sticker for that. If I manage to get out of the house for 10 minutes, I'll give myself a little reward for that. And it's so easy, and it's a good way to kind of remind myself that actually it's not all bad. The good things are happening, and sometimes those are really small good things, but you need to celebrate those as well, because particularly at the moment there's so much going on. I don't think anyone can be expected to do anything over and above the bare minimum, and anything, you know, just keeping going is a massive success right now. So, and I like it. I like bright and colourful, so that's one of my things.
And it sounds like having some external prompts is really helpful for you. So either being able to say at work, just give me a nudge and check in, or to your partner, just, you know, again, just maybe help me recognise if I'm, you know, maybe needing to reach out, but need someone to reach out first. And as well, having these visual cues to be able to go look at what I'm using, and certainly the colourfulness that appeals to me as well is something. And it's great to hear your experiences and what's helpful, because I think for people to be able to find their own things, the smaller things, the bigger things that really helps. Like you say, some days it might be really difficult to get out for a walk, but what else can I do that might support myself? And that's really, really nice to hear such a range of ways to kind of tap in and help yourself. What's the best ways for people to get in contact with you?
So the National Citizens Advice website is a good starting point. Obviously, I'm talking from Southampton, but people in different areas would be best off contacting their local office. And that is because there will be different services in Basingstoke or Portsmouth or Southampton or Romsey or wherever it is that you are. There's different local services, and the local advisors will have really specialist knowledge of those local services. Mm-hmm. The national website is citizensadvice.org.uk.
Could you spell citizens? Because I know for some people,
yeah,
that would be really useful.
So it's CITIZENS and then advice,
okay.
ADVICE.org.uk. Okay. There's lots of information on that national website, so you can find out actually an awful lot about benefits, and it may be for many people that they have a read on there and that's enough for them to solve their problem. But if not, there's a search function, so you can put in your postcode and it'll tell you what your nearest local office is, what their website is, what their phone number is as well.
And there's quite a lot of offices around, I think, isn't there? It's quite surprising how I'm based up in Hook, but actually I know that we've got at least a couple within in the next couple of towns from where I'm based. So there's quite a few around.
Yeah, there's I don't know how many there are over the country, but it's certainly quite a few. And obviously we've got kind of say Test Valley has got both Romsey and Andover, and then there's about 5 different ones in the New Forest and so on. So I think most people live within a half hour or so of an office, no matter where they are.
Which means that they could get some advice about literally what's available to them locally.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, most things will be on the phone or by email, but if you can speak to someone so say in Southampton, we've got a specific mutual aid group, we've got a higher level kind of immigration support service, which maybe somebody in Basingstoke wouldn't necessarily know about. But it's best to speak to someone from your local office if you can. But one thing I would say, the advice line, which is our kind of national call centre, and we're in a group with everyone else in Hampshire, basically. When you phone those numbers, it will try to put you through to your local office, but if they're all busy, it'll put you through to a different office. But then we've got a system so we can just refer straight through. So if someone from where you live in Hook, if you phoned and you got through to Southampton, we just put a thing through on the computer and someone from Hook would call you back if we weren't able to help you there and then.
It sounds fantastic to be able to kind of have a wider reaching national bank of information that people could look at, but also then having things that are more personalised locally, because I know from the job I do, there are so many services locally to here, but actually you need to kind of know to be able to find them. And often Googling them isn't enough, because they tend to work on referral basis. So you know, having those local services is a more kind of, we call them outposts, but what are they just classed as local kind of?
Yeah, they're called just local officers, so local citizens advice. So there's got to be somewhere between 200 and 300, I think, but don't quote me on that. I don't know exactly. And that's across England and Wales, which is kind of one organisation, and then Scotland, Northern Ireland are separate.
Yeah, I think it all sounds fantastic. So I'll make sure there's some links, as I said, where we put the videos. But is there anything that maybe we haven't talked about that you think it might be useful for people to know about before we finish our chat?
No, I think we've covered an awful lot. I think my main message to people, to anyone who's watching who thinks that we might be able to help, is please get in touch sooner rather than later. Because you'd be surprised, how much better you feel for talking to somebody, and secondly, you know, and knowing that there is a way forward, and secondly, because the sooner something is addressed, the more options we have in terms of resolving things. So I'd really recommend people to get in touch. You know, if you think this is bothering me but I've not been able to deal with it, we are here to support you. We will understand if you're struggling. We will not judge your situation. It's a completely free and confidential service, so do please get in touch with us.
Well, thank you so much for all of the time that you've given today. I think it's been great for people to be able to, again, see somebody and hear somebody talking. It's good to read stuff, it's great to have that information, but actually I think it's really nice to see such a warm, kind of friendly, welcoming face talking about it, because hopefully it will help people feel a bit more confident, a bit more comfortable in making that first step, which, as you said, is different. So thank you very much for talking to us today.
Thanks ever so much for your time, Claire. Thank you.
Thanks.